So good evening, everyone. My name is Cantatori. I am the Director of Training for Worth Ross Management Company. I would like to welcome you all to our March WRMC Speaker Series virtual event. For those of you that are joining us for the time, we are so excited to have you. Welcome. So we design these exclusive events to bring industry-leading experts to center stage for a unique and uninterrupted experience like no other. So you'll gain valuable insight, learn about best practices, and have the opportunity to ask questions. Our speakers are carefully selected and are familiar with the specific needs, challenges, and opportunities that association board members and managers are faced with. So before we get too far into the discussion, I did want to let everyone know that we are recording this session, much like all the others, and I will distribute the link once it is available on the YouTube channel. If you have not done so already, please remember to subscribe. We want to make sure that all of our team members and board members have the resources they need in order to be the best leaders for their communities. So, and that is what leads us to today's speaker series event. So this one is a bit unique than the ones we've had in the past. So it will be a panel discussion with some of our Worth Ross Management Company leadership team members. So with me tonight, Light, and she is our regional director for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we have Lane Lykes. He is our regional director for San Antonio. And Lane is also the general manager of the Broadway in San Antonio. So he'll be able to give us some unique perspective. And then it's great to have you both with us tonight, Lisa and Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
So today's panel discussion will be on association operations. So it's 1 year into the COVID pandemic. And so we're going to talk about how to maintain a sense of community, common challenges, basically kind of a guidelines overview. So the format for this evening would be a little bit different than prior events. So many of you have already put questions, so we thank you for that. And so when you initially registered for the event, start with those questions. And once they have been answered, should time permit, we will move to Q&R, which is questions and response from our attendees. If you do have any questions that you'd like to present, please make sure you send them via the chat box, and I will present them to the panelists. So that said, Lisa and Lane, are you ready?
Ready.
All right.
Excellent. All right, so the first question, Lisa, I'm gonna direct this one to you. So how can associations maintain a sense of community in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you. So sense of community, that's obviously been a challenge for all of us over the past year. At the same time, I think we've learned a lot over the past year. But if anything, our perception of sense of community has definitely shifted. When you consider, when you ask, how do you maintain the sense of community, you have to acknowledge first how your community has evolved over the past year. And even more importantly, identify the community vision for healing and togetherness. Sense of community may mean something totally different, from one building to the next. But the overall point of, sense of community is how can we bring our homeowners together? Is the sense of togetherness, is the sense of belonging. And we know our environment is different now. So I think, even more importantly, how do we either restore the sense of community now that, we've got the vaccine coming and many of us, many operations and other things kind of, reopening. I'm going to shy away from going back to normal because I think we all kind of have to acknowledge that, it may not be what it was, a year ago. So there may be some communities that during, at the start of the pandemic to now have not had any homeowner events or any gatherings within their associations, and that's okay. That's probably what most people have done, just for the safety of our team and homeowners. And then we have some who, had a very robust lifestyle aspect to their associations prior to the pandemic, and have done a really great job of transitioning those gatherings to virtual. So whether it's been, a virtual happy hour or virtual book club, we have one association that does virtual painting. The stores that do the painting and the wine, they would have, wine and paint supplies delivered, and everybody would log in and paint together. So I think, when you think about sense of community, it's not really just events, but it's bringing us together. So while in-person things may have been put on hold, we've still maintained the connection with one another. So if you've been one of those associations who has successfully maintained the connection, then it should be an easy transition. Number one, you've maintained that sense of community just in a different way. But it should be an easy transition to what the new normal may be, which is I think something that you probably have to think a little bit more about, as compared to maintaining, is how can we bring people together, learning what we've learned over the past year from the pandemic, and how do we create connections that are sustainable in our new environment. And then, when you go back to in-person gatherings, just consider where we're having these gatherings, can it accommodate social distancing? Possibly survey your community and ask them what they would like, as we restore that togetherness. When people participate in the decision and give feedback, and you're able to accommodate that, I think you will see, you may see more engagement that you had before the pandemic. But I would definitely encourage you to involve your homeowners. But overall, maintaining the sense of community, again, it's really just bringing people together. It's helping people feel like they belong. And I think I will just say one more thing. Time is short. There are so many stories from the winter event that we just had here in Texas, where, we had so many homeowners and so many board members come together, in the dark with no power and water, coming down from the ceiling, all gathering together in their hallways saying, okay, you go do this, and you go get that, and you go get the bucket, and you go do that. And the homeowners just came together and worked as a team for one another. And if you hadn't maintained a sense of community during a pandemic, you wouldn't have been able to do that. And I just think that is so commendable. And I would just be so proud to be at a building, which I think almost all of you are. But that's really a sign of you maintaining that sense of community. It's just in a different way. So it all depends on what your vision is for community, and we have a robust list of ideas if you need help, and I'm excited to see what this year brings.
Awesome. Those are great points, Lisa, talking about engagement, a sense of community. And I love the point you made about if you haven't experienced a sense of community in a pandemic, got it. So thank you so much. That's awesome. All right. So Lane, this question I will direct towards you. So given the recent change to the mask mandate across the state of Texas, what steps can an association take to protect the association and the community?
Well, that's a good question. There's a lot of different views on when you should wear a mask and who should wear a mask and what constitutes a mask. As a general manager on site, as well as a regional, different communities have different perceptions on what they need. And you really need to engage and listen to your homeowners and understand that the mask is a point of safety for many people. We exercise that the mask is not only protection for us, but it's also protection for them. But it's not permanent. We can fluctuate. We've seen recently that the lifting of the mask has provided more or less restrictions on activities outdoors. such as around the pool area or around your grills. And the common element, separating 6 feet, working out the gym with less people, but not with a mask. And also you see an increase in vaccinations. And so people are becoming more familiar with these restrictions being lifted, but also being mindful that not everyone has the vaccine. And it's important to respect their surroundings as well. So the mask is just part of the total community being healthy and being respectful of each other.
Excellent points. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, all right, so Lisa, this next question, when should associations consider returning to normal operations? For example, in-unit maintenance or opening amenities?
Another great question. And I think we talk about this question with boards on almost a weekly basis. While every building is doing something different, it's all with the same goal in mind, which is safety and keeping, doing what's best for the association. I'm glad that there's an example with this question, because I can speak specifically to some of the examples and then talk a little bit about some other ideas. So when it comes to in-home maintenance, we Worth Ross, we have a risk management team, and the risk management team has kind of been at the head of the table when it comes to the pandemic, really supporting our on-site teams and facility teams, based on the CDC as the anchor and also the feedback from the on-site teams. So in-home maintenance, about the middle of last year, when everything was shut down, our team was coming to work, but kind of like in their, proverbial bubble, so to speak, because no one was coming out of their home and so on. There was, we had stopped the in-home maintenance for the buildings that offer that. And we thought in the middle of last year, we realized, we need to start thinking about how to restore some services and, benefits to the buildings, because the homeowners have an expectation, and rightfully so, that there are things in their unit that should be taken care of if that service is offered. And so we got together and thought of how do we, when we get to a point to where it's the right time to provide our boards with the option to reintroduce in-home maintenance, we need to have guidelines in place to support our team and support our homeowners. So for things like in-home maintenance, the risk team, we created a standard operating procedure for in-home maintenance. And it is extremely granular. In other words, it's not just, hey, wear PPE and have, temperature checks and so on. It's very specific to the task that's being, requested by the homeowner. So for instance, if they want to have anything done on their HVAC system, air filter, anything, that's full PPE, it's waste disposal systems. It's a pretty detailed, methodical SOP for that specific repair. And then for other things, there are different layers of PPE, different layers of, pre-checks, post-checks. But we've prepared all of these guidelines for our on-site teams to discuss with their boards. So, if those are things that board members on the call tonight would like, we can provide them to you. Our managers can provide them to you, but we've considered this. Another thing that we considered halfway through the last year is really that same thought process for every aspect of your specific association. So we worked with the general managers to create a reopening plan. Similar to what I mentioned before, it's just not going to be the same as what it was. And so consider, how do you reopen with options for your board to consider? So you're not just, we want to give you every option we possibly can. How do we reopen? And then what's sustainable? What is our new norm going to be when we get to that point? So there's a lot of planning. There are, accommodations to consider. And then most importantly is communication with your homeowners, educating them, supporting them through, the change. but if you're not already considering, I think, most associations probably toward the end of last year up until now is when most associations began considering how to prepare to reopen. Again, it's not ripping the Band-Aid off to reopen. It's strategic. And that's what the standard operating procedures and the planning is for, is to make sure that we've thought of everything that we could possibly think of. And now we're just providing the guidance to the boards and helping them with that decision process. But I would encourage, do what's best for your association as far as when to reopen. But we have the tools available for you to consider when the right time is.
That's awesome. I love the key words, Lisa, using, communication, engaging, because even at the home office, the support team that we have, that office support too, our managers and team members, we are doing things a little bit differently as well. And when you're in person, it's easy just to walk up to someone, walk by their desk. But when you're in a virtual environment, it kind of changes the game a little bit. So create more committees, like we have a diversity inclusion committee, engage, talking, how better serve our team members, how can we better serve our homeowners. So I think those key words that you're talking about when you talk about getting back to normal operations, it's so true. It's all about the communication.
Right.
So great points. Love that. All right, thank you, Lisa. Okay, our next question, Lane. So how has COVID-19 impacted association financials? Can you speak to your experience at the Broadway?
That's an excellent question. And, every year when we prepare our budgets, we're very mindful. We're projecting the expenses for the upcoming year. And so we look at our expenses and we look at our income and we try to be reasonable, but also accommodating to the surroundings of our building and our needs of our homeowners. When COVID came around, we just basically diverted funds from our social committee that we had going on each month to buying PPE materials such as face masks and Lysol and wipes. Moving the funds just from one part of the budget over to another part of the budget was key. But also, we always anticipate the unexpected when you're managing a large property. You have the building itself and the budget itself is living every day. It's accommodating every day. Sometimes it's not accommodating and you have to find ways to accommodate. So when the PPE happened, we looked at where are we going to fund the protection for our employees, our staff members and team members, but also for our homeowners, and how can we serve them and help shoulder some of the burden and the restrictions that were being placed on. So we just moved funds from one area that we would normally use as a group and used it as offset PPE expenses. There's been some other areas too as well that we've looked at on reducing some of the services that we were doing in-house because of the restrictions, and that helped offset some of the cost. Overall though, as the pandemic moved through the year, we saw costs for materials lower. The demand for the materials at the very beginning was much more than it was in June or July, 6 months into it. And so we were able to then start planning ahead and reducing the cost over the long run by purchasing in advance and planning for it. Where we didn't have a plan and we weren't prepared at the very beginning of the pandemic because no one knew it was actually coming or what kind of impact it would have. So monitoring that, looking at the needs and communicating with our homeowners as well as our team members, we were able to help offset the expenses, but also identify savings whenever there was an opportunity to purchase something that we needed.
Awesome. Thank you,
I'll just
Lane.
mention one thing, Nicole, on that. That was really great, Lane. And I like what you said about kind of repositioning funds. One thing that I'll mention just on the last question that I had regarding opening up amenities and normal operations, while you've had amenities closed, you may have been able to finance the PPE and other cleaning supplies that you've increased because you haven't been doing as much within those areas. So you may not start to see increases to your expenses until you start reopening. So that could be headcount, that could be cleaning supplies, that could be contract labor, however your association is set up. But consider what your trend was in 2020, is obviously unlike 2019 because of COVID, but even 20 to 21 may be another new trend because you now are at full operation while still having to, disinfect and, our COVID cleaning protocol is every 1 to 3 hours. So that also may mean, maybe there's a need for more staffing or a shuffle in the schedules, but there are some accommodations, there are some impacts financial when you consider reopening in order to maintain, the cleanliness of your community. And then I'll just mention one more thing. Looking at a few associations, year over year, in relation to the expenses for COVID, inflation, 2 to 3%. So you've already got that increase applied for your supplies. And then if you remove, what we've spent, average associations, what we've spent in 2020 for COVID expense, that may have been capital or reserve expense, whether it's like a big cleaning station or something like that. That's not something that's going to repeat. But after you remove that and inflation, we still saw probably anywhere from 3 to 5% increase just in supply expense. So taking that into consideration as you, create your trend or whatnot for the next probably 3 to 5 years is something to consider as far as what, long-term increases to your, to your P&L.
Excellent points.
And I'll just add one little perspective that I've noticed on the last 60 days, some of the adjustments with restrictions and so forth is when there's new restrictions or new laws and it becomes habit, I don't know how many people would remember when you didn't wear a seatbelt, but now you get in the car and you automatically put the seatbelt on. We will lift the restrictions and we won't have face masks and we won't have to be temperature and sanitizing all the time. But our team members have already conditioned themselves and I don't see them backing off on the cleanliness and the extra efforts that we've taken because it's become a habit. So there are certainly negative aspects of being in a pandemic that's restrictive, but there's also some positive outlooks as well. I've seen potential growth in individuals that's even surprised themselves of them going above and beyond. And now it's just a natural course of their daily routine. And so those areas, we won't see a decrease in it. We'll just maintain the increased and the better services that we already offer.
That's a great point, Lane.
Oh, excellent point. I love that. Okay, great. Thank you. So, Lisa, this next question is for you. Should boards consider returning to in-person meetings? If so, any suggestions on the best approach to manage attendance and COVID protocols?
Sure. So I don't know if any of y'all have noticed how attendance has actually increased since offering board meetings by virtual dial-in. I know I've gone to a lot more meetings because of that. So I love it, but I know that many boards are chomping at the bit to get back to doing business face to face, which is also great. Again, I think it's the same mentality as reopening, amenities or services that the board should consider. Just as a caveat, the purpose of a board meeting is that the board gets together to do business. So if your board is 3 or 5 or 9, whatever it may be, you need to have a space that accommodates the board for social distancing and whatnot, as well as, any team members that may be, joining the meetings to support you all. if you have a space within your building that can accommodate, the homeowners to come to the meetings and social distance, then that would be great. If that's the direction you want to go. But let's say that your building doesn't have a space that can accommodate 6 board members plus, 25 to 30 homeowners. So in that case, I would consider, if the board wants to conduct business in person, then they can schedule their board meetings for in person and provide an option for homeowners to dial in so that they can still participate at some level like they have been, and also for the board to still receive, any questions or feedback that you are used to receiving during open forum. I'm not saying to have a board meeting and not allow homeowners into your board meeting. I'm just saying that you want to, the purpose of the board meeting is for the board to conduct business. So you definitely want to accommodate social distancing for the board. If you have a space that maybe can hold 5 homeowners or 10, whatever it may be, you could say, hey, there is space available for homeowners to come in person to the meeting, but we will limit that to whatever that number is and provide a dial-in for everyone else. And, I think there are a lot of different options. I think it all depends on the accommodations within your building. How we were doing it before, how you were doing it before could probably work, depending on the space that you have and how you hold your meetings, because again, every board is different. But we want to make sure that the board, we want to make sure that you feel comfortable. Want to make sure that the homeowners feel comfortable, and we will accommodate in any way possible, whatever the board decides. But to answer the question, I think, we have probably, 25% of our boards that are going to start going back to in-person meetings in April. We have about a handful that have continued to have in-person board meetings, but their space and their building can accommodate that. And then I think I would anticipate that the majority by maybe mid-year will return to in-person board meetings. At the same time, like I mentioned earlier, people have been really excited with the attendance and the engagement, being that there is a virtual option. So you could go back to in-person meetings, but just always have a dial-in available for anyone who is, anybody who would like to dial in. I think if anything, the pandemic has provided, has taught us that we are all flexible, and no matter what, we'll figure out a way to make whatever we need to make work.
Yes, flexible and resilient.
Yeah, that's probably more than flexible. Yeah.
Definitely. Those are excellent points, Lisa. Thank you so much. Okay, the next question for Lane. So how have daily operations been modified over the last year? Frequency of cleaning, temperature check, and contact tracing. I know everybody's going to be excited to hear response to this one. And Lisa, feel free to chime in if you have anything.
Oh,
as well.
Lane, you can have this one. Okay.
Well, I'm blessed to be at the Broadway, and I can share with you our staff here, but not every community has the same accommodation, so it fluctuates. We prepared several years ago a preventive maintenance program, and so when we went into this pandemic, we started adjusting our protocol for those PM agreements to be fulfilled, because we had an obligation to our owners that we had created before the pandemic. And so we educated our staff, we educated the homeowners, and they all understood what to expect when we were going to perform maintenance in their unit. But we also had the challenge too, that for communities that didn't have in-house maintenance, that were doing work by themselves, setting the standards with outside contractors coming in. It was important for us as a company as a steward for these homeowners associations to accommodate the needs of the owners without inconveniencing them. We have many homeowners that depend on their staff they trust to come in and take care of minor things. And then we have other homeowners that we very, very seldom hear from. And they're very independent, and we're here for them. One of the things I found very interesting over the last year, and this is something that we've talked about, is thinking outside the box, thinking outside of what's normally happening and how can we accommodate the homeowner and still achieve the same results, but perhaps in a different manner. During 2020, here at the Broadway, we had 2 homeowners in full construction mode, where they had anywhere from 20 to 30 people in their units working every day and following the PPE guidelines and making sure that everyone was safe and the homeowners were safe. And we created an atmosphere for that to happen. And we worked with the vendors, we worked with the contractors, and we worked with the homeowners. And we sat down as a group and we talked about what would be best for them. And as things progressed, we were able to see what was working and what wasn't working. I'm very excited to say that, our homeowners got moved into their new homes and everyone came out okay. But it was a challenge for us. Other associations don't offer the same amenities or same services that we do. But they are aware, as anyone in Texas, what the standards were for the PPE, the mask, the temperature, signing in, and so forth. It's very critical for all of our communities, and we do this on a regular basis now, is to record the guests as they come in. So trace contacting for us was very easy because we knew who was coming in and when they were coming in and who were they visiting. For us at the Broadway, we have Building Link, which is a fantastic service. So we were able to record the vendor, the temperature, and the unit in the time that they came in. And then it was, if anything was reported back, and we're very lucky that nothing was reported back to us, we would be able to go back and say, okay, Mr. So-and-so had XYZ out at this time, and this is who the individual was. I'm very proud to say that, we create relationships. We have long-term relationships with many of our vendors and our homeowners. And so the frequency of communication and sharing the information with each other is almost second nature to us. It was a cooperation of something that was already in place, and we just enhanced on that. The importance of understanding the needs of the association and understanding that life was going to go on even though the pandemic was in place. Our job as stewards for their community was to make sure that they were able to live comfortably in their unit, have the repairs taken care of, and their needs accommodated. And so it was a group effort. It wasn't one aspect saying, we're going to do this. It was several aspects of saying, what can we do and how can we do this in the best way? And each building had a different way of coming about. Each one was very successful for their particular buildings. So I can't say there was one magic potion. There were several magic, and it really came down to our team members, our leadership at the buildings, and our homeowners, and the relationships that were created prior to the pandemic. This will probably not be the last pandemic that we go through. We're always going to have some sort of challenge that we don't expect, but communication, and we've kind of mentioned that in several questions tonight, is the key to success. The more you communicate, the more participation you have, but also you gain more knowledge on what the homeowner needs and what the staff needs, the team members need. So I would say that our success at the Broadway and in San Antonio at the communities, communication and setting the standards that would be best fit their community to move forward with the needs of the association. And when we remind ourselves, we are stewards of the association and maintaining their homes, but we're also maintaining the building. And so There are large equipments that has to be taken care of. There's roofing, there's plumbing. Not all of it's in the homes. And so we all have to accommodate for those areas as well. So again, communication, relationships, and looking and seeing what's best for that community is the key.
Wow, those are great points. I love, again, I'm really a big proponent of communication. Lane, I hate to put you on the spot, but I wanted to just ask this question. Do you feel that because you were so adamant about staying on top of the communication, that I'm sure there were situations that came up where there was a little bit of pushback? I mean, because let's face a pandemic, it's fatigue, it's people are stressed out, they're going through things they can't see, their loved ones, their friends. So do you think that because you were adamant and did such a great job with the communication, that kind of gave you less pushback from maybe visitors or people coming to the even homeowners that
That's a good question,
the
and I
whole
can,
wearing the mask and anything?
yeah. You can over communicate,
Okay.
and over communicate is very destructive on the performance of the building and your team members. Many of us do not like to come to work every day or get home every day and see our inbox filled full of communication. So we selectively looked and we tried to minimize the communication that was going out, but being consistent about our message and also incorporating positive communication. We don't only communicate when there's an emergency or there's a restriction, but we also communicate on positive things. So that way there's an interest in opening that email. We also used emergency broadcast, which was either via text or a voicemail. So there's different types of communication, but we definitely saw COVID fatigue. We over communicated sometimes. People got tired of hearing about the same thing week after week. So by changing it up, by delivering a different message, by sending out positive things and success on areas that we had success on, help us stay engaged with our homeowners and eliminated them from tuning us out. If you communicate too much, you will have people that will just start to tune you out. And that's where the communication starts to break down. And once that happens, it's very hard to reestablish it.
Great. I love the points. Yeah, the positive, communicating the positive, definitely. Great, Lane. Thank you so much. Okay, so here is another question that have come in. So Lisa, I'll direct this one to you. So online meetings have generated greater attendance, as you mentioned before, Lisa, than we ever had. So how do we keep that level of participation after we go back? Now, you touched on it a little bit. Seems like they want more.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's really simple, but maybe it's not simple. I log into more meetings because it's easy. It's easy to dial into a meeting versus, packing up, driving, or just even walking downstairs for homeowners. If things are convenient and things are easy, more people tend to participate and engage. But I will say, and that's why earlier I mentioned maybe, if you do in-person meetings, maybe your documents allow for dial-in, or maybe, record a resolution to allow for it. But if you go back to in-person meetings, maybe always offer a dial-in and to maintain, that participation. I was going to say something else, but now I can't remember. Yeah, I would just, again, when it's convenient and it's easy, then people dial in. Oh, this is what I was going to say. You also may want to consider one reason why you may, probably a small percentage of the increased attendance is also because of the circumstances that we have been in over the past year. Mm-hmm. People are scared. They want to feel informed. They want to know, what we're doing, what the board's doing to help keep the building, sanitized and safe. And, there's there's an emotional need that needs to be met. And for them, that makes people want to be more involved. That makes people want to participate. It makes people want to, log into a meeting. So, you may have some fall off of your, high attendance, once things go forward into the new norm. But you may maintain some of that attendance if if you consider offering the dial-in along with your in-person.
So, yeah, I love this comment that you just made. People are just longing, they've not been engaged, interacting in person. So yeah, I mean, I find myself logging into meetings. Really, sometimes I find myself logging into a meeting. I wasn't even invited. I'm like, I just want to see what's going on. Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Okay,
Sure.
Lane, this question is directed to you. So, could you discuss the formation of and the duties of HOA committees and what does not constitute a board recognized committee?
Really, there's no such thing as a committee that's not recognized by the board. That would be just basically a group of homeowners getting together and doing something, having dinner or whatever the case might be. So I'll say this, it's always exciting and it's interesting whenever you're looking for a new home, and the appeal of an association and knowing that there's going to be guidelines and there's going to be triggers in place to make sure that your home is protected and the market value increases. And you know that because of the governing documents, that there's standards that are being met. Boards are put in place to help manage that association and to make sure that the governing documents are being followed. As an extension of the board, there may be times to create a committee. For instance, of a roofing project or a redecorating project, and you'll select homeowners or ask for homeowners with that background to sit on that committee. And once the committee has, the charter for that committee has been established and the committee has ran its course, they're dissolved. There's also charters that are created for such as like a social committee that might be ongoing for however long years, but they're designed with a guideline put in place of what's expected and what is needing to be reported back to the board members. The reports and the reporting back to the board and the reporting back to the association helps budgets, helps show interest in that particular committee. It provides additional information. One of the things that we rely heavily on as managers is historical information. So creating that charter and having those minutes from the meetings, we can look back and see what was successful and wasn't successful. Or perhaps when you're looking at a large capital expense, such as a roofing or air conditioning job, you can look back and see what steps were taken. What was the last RFP and what was looked at and what was discussed through the committee, and how did they come about their selection process? So the selection of a committee, be it a social one or a construction one, is always important, but it needs to be followed through with the charter. The charter is just an extension of the governing documents, and it provides the board controls to help monitor the activity of the committee, being able to be responsible to the other homeowners in the building that they report to, and help show some guidance with the committee on what needs to happen in a particular issue, and involves the manager to assist them with the needs that they may need to be successful in that committee. So there's different types, but charters are always great when a committee is formed, because it provides an extension of the governing documents. And that's basically why we move into associations, is because we want to maintain our market value. We want to maintain the quality of life that we purchased. At Broadway, we always refer to our rules and regulation as a guide to maintain their market value. We're not here to tell you what you can't do, but we are here to maintain what you can do and enhance your appeal to the community. So
That perspective, Lane, regarding not here to tell you what you cannot do, but a way to enhance the community. I love that different perspective. Let's see if there's any other questions that have come in. Any other questions? So I just want to remind our attendees that if you do have any questions at this time, please feel free to type those questions in for Lisa and Lane. While we're waiting for that, is there anything, I want to be mindful of time, but was there anything, Lisa or Lane, you wanted to touch base on that thought of after you had answered your question that you want to maybe just revisit again? I wanted to give you both an opportunity because I know that sometimes as we're having some of these panel discussions, something pops up and you say, oh, I really want to add this to what I was saying.
I'd like to add just one thing, and that is that many of the communities that we manage are mature and that they are developed already. And some of the communities that we take on are brand new. And for a better term, they're still in the infancy, they're still growing. And as the community grows and as the community starts to mature, you realize that the governing documents that were written before anyone moved in may need to be adjusted. And it's always helpful and it's always great to be mindful of the needs of the community, that those rules and regulations that are in place when you moved in can be modified if the association sees that it's not working for their homeowners. Again, they're buildings at first, but they become communities when we have our homeowners move into them. And as they grow and as their needs change, is to be mindful to say, okay, we can change this. You know, maybe this particular rule that was written before the building was even constructed no longer needs to exist, and we can do away with that. You know, associations are in place to help people's lives, not to hamper them. Good management is there to make sure communication of the homeowners is brought to the board, so the board can then listen and react to it. It's not a stalemate where you live in a community that you never see your neighbors. You see your neighbors when you live in an association. Many times, you'll see them several times during the day, and you want to be able to communicate that. So I just wanted to add that.
Excellent point.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Lane. And actually that's a good segue into my one of my final comments. So if you have your governing documents that you feel may need a review, or maybe just support understanding some of the factors that drive what's in your governing documents. Initially when your associations are formed, the developer works with their attorney to put in the things that they want in there and take out the things that they don't, minus the staple things per TUCA. So there's typically an opportunity shortly after transition and probably every maybe 3 to 5 years to look at those. But if a board is looking to review those or get guidance on that, in addition to their association attorney, we offer board member training. So onboarding for board members. And so I was just going to mention if any of you, I know many boards just recently transitioned, whether it's, one new board member or the majority, whatever it may be, or you just need a refresher because times are different. I would encourage you to reach out to us if you'd like us to schedule something for your board. We can do it virtual. Or we can do it, in person, depending on your comfort level. But that's really an opportunity for us to work with the board, the board individually as that board, to talk about, maybe there are some opportunities in your docs. Maybe maybe we need to, support you guys and, how to transition your meetings to in person and, just the basics. When do we ask for a motion? When do we not? But we like to customize that time for our boards so that it's impactful and helpful for what you guys do, which is, you volunteer to support, the homeowners in your building, and that's not a small thing. So when we say that everyone's COVID fatigued and we talk about our teams, that goes for the board members also. We consider you part of our team. And you guys have done a lot this past year. So we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. And I love the point you made about just reaching out if you do need that support. Worth Ross Management Company is always here and available to support. And reach out to your managers, and you can reach out to your regional directors and just find out what additional trainings do we have. What do we offer? And of course, if you have not already subscribe to our YouTube channel, I highly recommend that, because there's so many different videos available to you. Once you subscribe, every time we upload, you are notified. So I do not see any other questions that have popped up. So with that being said, I'll give just a few more seconds, but I want to thank personally Lane and Lisa. Thank you so much for your knowledge, your insight, for taking the time to share. I think I'm loving these panel discussions. These are awesome. So since there are no other questions,
Yeah.
you guys, thank you so much again for joining us, Lisa and Lane, and everyone else. Thank you for joining us. We will see you. It looks like, wait a minute, before we go, there looks like there was a question that just popped up. Oh, thank you. Just thank you too. Appreciate it. So you guys have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.